You look at an old photograph of someone you've lost, and you feel that heavy ache. You think they are gone. You believe the past is just a fading memory, blowing away like smoke. That is the tragedy of time, right? Wrong. Richard Feynman argued that this heartbreak is actually an illusion. They haven't gone anywhere. That moment is still happening, right now, as real as the chair you're sitting on. The past didn't vanish. You just can't turn your head to look behind you. Here is the problem. We feel time passing. We feel like we are on a boat, drifting down a river. The water behind us is the past. It's gone, it's flowed away. The water ahead is the future. It hasn't happened yet. And the boat? That's now. That's the only thing that feels real to us. But to a physicist, this feeling is a trick. It is a persistent illusion. In the laws of physics, there is no river. There is only a landscape. Think of it like cities on a map. Imagine you are standing in Times Square in New York City. You can see the billboards, and you can hear the noise. It is very real to you. Now, does that mean Los Angeles has disappeared? Does that mean the Eiffel Tower has ceased to exist just because you aren't standing next to it? Of course not. Los Angeles is still there. It is sitting on the West Coast and having its own now. You just aren't observing it. You can't see it from where you're standing. But if you could fly up high enough, you would see that New York and Los Angeles exist at the exact same time. They are just in different places. Time is exactly the same. It is just another kind of distance. The past is not a time that has vanished. It is simply a place located down the road in the fourth dimension. The year 1920 is just like Los Angeles. It is sitting there, fixed, permanent, bustling with life, and fully real. The year 2050 is like London, waiting over the horizon. Just because your consciousness is currently parked in the location we call today, it doesn't mean yesterday has crumbled into nothingness. It is all still there. The universe doesn't delete its history, and it just keeps it in a place you can no longer reach. So if time is just a place, what does the whole map look like? Physicists call it the block universe. To understand it, you have to stop thinking of the world as a movie that plays frame by frame. Instead, think of the entire history of the cosmos, from the Big Bang to the final fade-out, as a giant, solid loaf of bread. A long, rectangular block. Inside this block, you have everything. You have the dinosaurs at one end, you have the Roman Empire in the middle, and you have us, right here. And way down at the other end, you have whatever happens a billion years from now. When you say now, all you are doing is taking a knife and cutting a thin slice through that loaf. Everything on that slice is what you experience as the present moment. But here is the trick, and this is where Einstein comes in. Depending on how you move, and depending on your speed, you cut the loaf at a different angle. If you were moving fast enough, your now slice would tilt. It would cut into what I call the future. But for you to be able to cut into it, the future must already be there. You can't slice a part of the bread that hasn't been baked yet. This implies something absolutely staggering. It means the future is not an unwritten book. It is not a mist that hasn't formed. It is already there. It is frozen in the block, waiting for you to arrive. The moment you turn off this video, the moment you go to sleep tonight, and the moment you take your last breath, they are all already sitting there in the block, just as real, just as solid as the moment you were born. So if the universe is a solid block, what are you? You probably think of yourself as a traveler, a little point of consciousness moving forward day by day. You wake up, you do things, and you go to sleep. You leave the past behind, but inside the block, that is not what you look like at all. If you could step outside the universe and look at the whole thing at once, you wouldn't see a person moving. You would see a shape, a long, solid, winding structure embedded in the space-time. At one end of this structure is a tiny crying baby. That's your beginning. At the other end is an old person taking a final rest. That's your end. And in between, there is a continuous, unbroken tube of matter. Every version of you that has ever existed, the you learning to walk, the you falling in love, and the you watching this video right now, is just a different cross-section of this single massive object. Physicists have a funny name for this. They call it a space-time worm. It sounds strange, doesn't it? But it's beautiful. It means you don't travel through time. You are time. You are a physical structure that spans across decades. You are stretched out. The baby you were didn't disappear. It is still there at the tail end of the worm, connected to you by a solid chain of atoms that never breaks. But here is the mystery. If we are these long, giant, four-dimensional worms stretching from birth to death, why doesn't it feel like that? Why do we feel like we are trapped in just one tiny slice, balancing on the edge of now? The reason you feel like you are moving in one direction, and only one direction, has nothing to do with time itself. It has to do with messiness. Take a coffee cup. You accidentally knock it off the table. It falls. Smash. It breaks into 100 pieces. Coffee spills everywhere. That's a familiar scene. Now, imagine if you saw the reverse. The shards of ceramic suddenly jump up from the floor and snap back together perfectly. The coffee leaps back into the cup, and it lands gently on the table. You would say, that's impossible. That's magic. But here is the crazy part. If you look at the atoms, the individual particles that make up the cup and the coffee, there is nothing in the laws of physics that says they can't do that. If you reversed the motion of every single atom, they would reassemble the cup. And the laws of motion work exactly the same way, forwards and backwards. So why doesn't the cup fix itself? Because there are a billion ways for the cup to be broken, and only one way for it to be whole. This is what we call entropy. It's just a fancy word for probability. The universe naturally slides from order to disorder, simply because there are more ways to be messy than to be tidy. You remember the past because the past was more ordered. You can't remember the future because the future is just chaos waiting to happen. We are trapped in this flow, not because time moves, but because we are surfing on a wave of increasing disorder. The arrow of time isn't a fundamental law. It's just a statistical accident. But there is one thing in the universe that is immune to this messiness. One thing that escapes the arrow of time completely. Light. If you could shrink yourself down and ride on a single photon, a particle of light, something incredible would happen. You would look at your watch, and the hands would stop. Completely. Imagine a photon traveling from a star in the Andromeda galaxy. It flies across the vast, empty darkness of space for 2.5 million years to reach your eye tonight. To us, that is an eternity. Civilizations rise and fall while that light is traveling. But for the photon, it's instantaneous. The moment it leaves the star and the moment it hits your retina are the same moment. It doesn't experience the journey. It doesn't experience waiting. It is born and it dies in the exact same tick of the clock. And this means that every time you look up at the night sky, you aren't just looking into the past. You are physically connecting to it. That beam of starlight is a bridge where time has collapsed to zero. It stitches the ancient universe and your present reality together into a single, seamless point. We always think traveling back into the past is pure fantasy, something for science fiction movies or H.G. Wells novels. We think the past is a locked door that no key can open. But for the smallest building blocks of the universe, unlocking that door is just a standard maneuver. Richard Feynman proposed something that sounds almost crazy when you first hear it. He suggested that antimatter, that mysterious, explosive twin of normal matter, is actually just normal matter moving backward in time. Let me draw you a picture. Imagine an electron. It's a little particle cruising along a timeline, moving from yesterday to today, just like you are. But suddenly, it gets hit by a burst of energy. A photon smacks into it. This collision is so violent that the electron doesn't just change direction in space. It changes direction in time, and it performs a U-turn. It starts traveling from today back to yesterday. Now, if you were sitting there watching this happen, you wouldn't see a particle disappearing into the past. Our brains can't process that. Instead, you would see a new particle appear, moving forward but behaving strangely. It would look exactly like an electron, but with the opposite electric charge. It would look like a positron, a piece of antimatter. This is the secret of the Feynman diagrams. The zigzag. Think of a sewing machine stitching a piece of cloth. The needle goes down, then it comes up, then it goes down again. If you only looked at the surface of the cloth, you would see a line of separate stitches. But underneath, it is all one single thread, looping back and forth, up and down. Matter and antimatter are the same thread. One is the thread going down into the future. The other is the thread coming back up from the future. And this isn't just a drawing on a chalkboard. This is happening inside you. Right now, there are radioactive isotopes in your body, like potassium-40 in bananas or in your bones, that decay and spit out positrons. For a split second, inside your own cells, tiny particles are literally traveling backward through time before they annihilate and vanish. You are not just a solid object moving forward. You are a shimmering web of particles stitching the past and future together, billions of times every second. But there is a final twist to this story, one that bothers even the smartest physicists, one that suggests the past isn't just still there, but that it can actually be changed by what you do right now. We are raised on a simple rule. Cause comes before effect. You strike a match, and then the fire starts. You drop a glass, and then it breaks. You never see the glass break 5 seconds before you drop it. That would be madness. But in the quantum world, madness is just another Tuesday. There is a famous experiment called the delayed choice quantum eraser. The name sounds complicated, but the idea is terrifyingly simple. It asks a question. Can a choice you make in the present determine what happened in the past? Imagine you are firing a single atom at a wall with 2 open slits. If you don't watch it, the atom behaves like a ghost. It goes through both slits at the same time, like a wave. If you do watch it, it behaves like a rock. It picks just one slit and goes through it. So, scientists decided to trick the atom. They let the atom fly through the slits first. They waited until it had already passed through and was flying through the air on the other side. The event was over. The history was written. Then, and only then, they decided whether to switch on the camera to see which path it took. Common sense says it shouldn't matter. The atom has already passed the wall. It has already made its choice. You can't change history after it happens, right? Wrong. If the scientists turned the camera on after the atom passed, the data showed that the atom went back in time and acted like a rock. If they left the camera off, the data showed it went back in time and acted like a ghost. Think about what that means. The decision made in the future determined the path taken in the past. It implies that the past is not a stone tablet carved by our ancestors. It is more like clay. It is soft. It is waiting for us to look at it. The history of the universe might not be fully written until we observe it today. Now, I know what you are thinking. I can hear the questions already. If the future is already there, sitting in the block waiting for me, then what is the point? Am I just a puppet? Is everything I do meaningless because the script is already written? It is a terrifying thought. It makes you feel small. It makes you feel like a prisoner in your own life. But let's look at it differently. Just because the book is already printed doesn't mean the characters inside didn't make their choices. It doesn't mean their tears weren't wet or their laughter wasn't loud. The structure might be fixed, but the experience of building it is yours. You are the one weaving that thread. And actually, there is a profound beauty in this idea. A deep, quiet comfort that physics offers us in our darkest moments. We grieve because we think the past is gone, but we think of time as a fire that burns up everything behind us, leaving only ash and memory. We think the people we lost have ceased to exist, but if Feynman is right, nothing is ever destroyed. The past is not ash, it is a diamond. Think of a specific moment. Maybe you are 7 years old. It is a Tuesday afternoon. The sunlight is streaming through the kitchen window, hitting the dust motes in the air. Your grandmother is standing by the stove. She turns around, she looks at you, and she smiles. That moment is not just a chemical echo in your brain. It is a physical place. It is a permanent coordinate in the architecture of the universe. That Tuesday afternoon is still happening. She is still there. She is still turning. She is still smiling. You can't go back to her, and she can't come forward to you. But in the grand, a four-dimensional crystal of reality, she has never left. That moment is safe. It is locked away in eternity, perfect and untouched, exactly as it was. So in the end, we are not just passengers drifting helplessly on a river. We are the river. We are these long, magnificent, four-dimensional astronauts stretching across the cosmos, built from stardust and time. But before you go, I want to leave you with a question. A question that might keep you awake tonight. If the past is still real, does the version of you from 10 years ago know they are in the past? Or are they sitting there right now, living that moment, convinced that they are the ones in the present? And if that is true, is there a version of you, 10 years in the future, looking back at this very second, seeing you as nothing more than a ghost in their history? I'll leave you something to imagine.